City of Loveland Town Hall meeting. We're broadcasting over the phone, broadcasting over the web, and we've got some folks here in council chambers. So stick around, listen to our live town hall meeting, and we encourage you to participate by submitting questions and voting in our polls. Just got a couple of people on who dialed early on our inbound participant line, but we are dialing out to nearly 17,000 households around the city right now. We also, again, have participants here in council chambers as well as on Facebook Live. This is your opportunity to learn more about the broadband network proposal and to ask any questions you may have. We'll hear from Loveland City Manager Steve Adams in a moment. And for those of you on the phone, be thinking about questions that you'd like to ask, and then you can press 0 on your phone when you're ready to submit your questions to one of our operators. I know many of you registered for this event using our web registration page, so if you've already got a question in mind, don't hesitate to push 0 on your phone, submit your question. You'll have the opportunity to ask your question live, or you can let your operator know that you want me to read it over the air, whatever's more comfortable for you. Just press 0 to submit a question at any time for those of you on the phone. For those of you in our Facebook Live audience, just leave your questions in the comments, and we'll be reading some of those over the air as well. And for those of you in our council chambers audience, there are some cards in the front of the room and some eager city staff ready to gather up those questions, so you can just jot down your question. I'm happy to read those questions, and we'll be getting them answered by our panel of speakers during this hour-long forum. So for those of you just joining us, this is a live telephone town hall with Loveland residents. We're also broadcasting on Facebook Live, and we've got an audience here in council chambers. Since 2015, the City of Loveland has been looking into the possibility of providing broadband or high-speed internet to the community. If approved by City Council, the fiber optic broadband network would be an optional service available to every home and business in the city. So listen in to learn more and press 0 on your phone to submit a question at any time. We'll have some survey questions for you to vote on using your phone, and I'll let you know about some websites and social media resources as well, so you may consider grabbing a pen and paper to write down anything important that you hear. We are dialing out again to nearly 17,000 households, and it'll take just a minute longer, so we appreciate your patience. For those of you on the phone, if you already have a question in mind, don't hesitate to push 0 on your phone and submit that question. Otherwise, listen in and think about questions you might be interested in asking as you learn about this broadband network proposal. This is your opportunity to give us feedback and to ask questions that you may have. So listen in, vote in our polls, submit questions, listen as your neighbors ask questions, and we'll be going for 1 hour tonight, so stay as long as you can. We very much appreciate your participation. Again, we'll hear from Loveland City Manager Steve Adams in just a moment. So for those of you on the phone, be thinking about any questions you might want to ask as you're listening to our panel of speakers, and you can press 0 at any time to submit a question during this live forum. And for those of you in the council chambers audience, I know some of you have already submitted questions, but you can do so during this forum by writing a question down on the cards at the front of the room, handing them to city staff, and we'll be able to take those questions during the forum as well. And for those in the Facebook Live audience, if you're streaming this live, you can use the comments to go ahead and leave us a question in there. I'm happy to read those as well. So we've got a few hundred people on the phone. We've got some audience here in council chambers, and we've got an audience on Facebook Live. It's time we get started. So remember, you can press 0 on the phone to submit a question. You can also press 7 if you'd like to get email updates from the City of Loveland moving forward and keep you better updated on this process as we move along. So again, 0 for questions, 7 to give us your email address to get email updates. And it's my pleasure to kick this off by turning it over to Loveland City Manager Steve Adams. Please go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody here tonight for coming, and also for our audiences out in the social media and Channel 16. In 2015, more than 82% of the voters participating in that election said yes to the city taking a look at the authority that we had and restoring that authority to the City of Loveland to make a decision on this important topic of broadband, and to be able to provide that directly or indirectly to all of our citizens within the City of Loveland. Since then, our staff has been very busy working on a lot of background information and bringing forward to our City Council a lot of information. This latest round of information is due to come to our City Council on October the 23rd. And at that time, then we'll be providing that information to them. It'll also be available through the city's website so people can see that as an agenda item. We also then since it is such an important opportunity, we wanted to use this rather unique way of gaining some insight into our community directly. And so we ask for your patience a little bit, as this is all new technology for all of us, and just be as patient as you can. The first thing I would like to do tonight is to ask any city council members in the audience to please stand. Yeah, it's just you. So. And then also the city council authorized the city to appoint a citizen advisory board called the Loveland Communications Advisory Board. And I see that we have some members of that board with us tonight, so if you all could please stand. And Paul is standing over here on the right too. So thank you very much. And then with that, I would have the honor and privilege of introducing Brieana Reed-Harmel, who has been our project manager on this project from the beginning and has been the one responsible, along with a lot of great staff, to collect all the information and data that we've been gathering for this important project. And she's a senior electrical engineer with our Water and Power Department and has this as an other duty as assigned. I don't know that I told her the truth about how much that might take to get done. So I'd like to introduce Brieana at this time.
Thank you, Steve. City staff has been working diligently on this project for the last several years. We've conducted feasibility studies. We've done multiple surveys to our residents, our business, and other community organizations throughout the years. And we've reviewed case studies and done a lot of homework on what this might look like in the city of Loveland and what other communities have done. We've hired several consultants over the years as well to help us guide through that, through the process, and help us understand what the different issues and concerns are as we move through this process. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions we have today regarding the project, technical or otherwise. And I'm also going to introduce our Vice Chair for our Loveland Communications Advisory Board, Paul Langfield.
Thank you, Brieana. So as the IT leader for a local development company for over a decade, I witnessed firsthand the positive impact that installing a fiber network in the throughout the east side of Loveland had on bringing well-known businesses to the area that needed fast and reliable internet. And so I was intrigued when the city started looking into the broadband question and became a member of the task force. And for the same reasons, I applied for appointment to the Communications Advisory Board. So among other things, the advisory board, which you'll hear people refer to as LCAB for short, their mandate is to understand the background of the broadband issue, to stay abreast of the progress that the project goes through, and then to make informed, unbiased recommendations to the City Council for action. So LCAB had its first meeting back in July of this year, and we've all just been kind of getting up to speed with the history of the project and what's currently happening. And then we'll be the group who's responsible for the final information that's presented to Council on the 23rd. So, with that, I'll hand it back to the moderator, Ian.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Paul. Thank you, Bree. Thank you, Steve, as well. And thank you for our audiences who have joined from the phone, web, and here in council chambers. We're going to go to our first question from Lonnie right away, but I wanted to remind everybody on the phone, you can press 0 to submit a question. We'll have a survey question for you to vote in after we take Lonnie's question on the phone. Hey, Lonnie, you're live on the line. Why don't you go ahead with your question?
I was wondering what you've learned from Longmont, since it seems they've had a successful implementation.
Sure, I'll take that question. So we've actually engaged with Longmont on a regular basis over the years, and so I think that the list is probably too long to tell you what we've learned from Longmont, but there's been a lot of sharing back and forth that they've been more than willing to provide lessons learned, best practices going forward. So I guess that's the the short of it. I mean, there's just a lot that Longmont has been sharing with us. Do you want to add anything? Okay.
Thanks. And Lonnie, any follow-up on that?
Well, I was just trying to understand what the major takeaways were. What were those lessons learned that we need to really consider, the real high-level type of issues?
So they've actually been very successful in rolling out a retail model to their community. So they offer broadband directly like they do other utility services like water and power. And that's been much more successful than they had originally anticipated. They were originally anticipating take rates, which is the number of subscribers of the community, in the mid-30s. And they've actually are at, I believe, 56% now, which is which is much higher than they were anticipating. So with that in mind, there's been some discussions about making sure that we look at low take rates, but also being more successful than anticipated in making sure that there would be enough capital to build out the entire network should we have a lot of subscribers. That increases the network capital costs. There's also a lot of information around competition from the other incumbents in the market, and just making sure that you're prepared for that. Should we move forward with a retail model like Longmont did? So I mean, those are some of the big highlights. There's a lot of different best practices around construction and notifying citizens and doing a thorough job in letting people know what's going on and doing outreach through the process that we also picked up along the way.
If I could add to Lonnie, one other thing we talked about is customer service. How do you work with customers in this particular utility system? What kind of response times do you need to have? What kind of questions do you get? What kind of staffing do you need to make sure you're responsive to your customers as you deploy and then service and operate this network? And that's been very helpful for us to estimate staffing and to estimate facilities and other type of things that they've been very helpful in sharing with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Lonnie. Appreciate you participating. Again, press 0 with a question. Lonnie, if you have any follow-up, go ahead and press 0. We're happy to take you again after we get through some of our other questions from our phone and in-person audiences. We're going to run our first survey question for everybody to vote on the phone. We want to know, how important is having a choice in internet service provider to you? Press 1 if it's very important. Press 2 if it's important, press 3 if you're undecided, and press 4 if it's not important. Again, how important is having a choice in internet service provider to you? Press 1 for very important, 2 for important, 3 for undecided, and 4 for not important. We'll have a few more survey questions for you to vote on. Our next question comes from our in-person audience here in council chambers, and this is from Mary, who asks, do we have the option to opt out of this service? Who'd like to take that one on?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be an additional option, but it won't take away any of the options that people already have for using incumbents or other ISPs.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you very much. And I do have some important social media handles and websites that anybody might write down if they're interested in learning more about this online. On the web, you can go to cityofloveland.org/broadband. On Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/Loveland Water and Power. On Twitter, twitter.com/LovelandWP. And I'll have a couple more announcements like that in a moment, so you may grab a pen and paper. We're going to go to our next live question from our phone audience. This one comes from Mike. Hey, Mike, you're up. Go ahead, please, sir. Mike, are you there? All right, I'll go ahead and read Mike's.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So does the city of Loveland feel they have the capability and the expertise available to handle the capabilities of internet service providing?
I think so. We have a lot of experience running other types of utilities. Obviously, this is going to require a lot of additional staff with specialized expertise in specific areas related to network operations and internet service providing. But as far as just knowing how to operate a utility, maintain a system, we have a ton of expertise in that area.
Also, Mike, if I could add a couple of things. One is a lot of the components of the broadband system are being installed underground, and we have underground utilities. We have customer service. We have 24/7, 365-a-day operations. And so in some of these areas, I think we have a lot of strong experience. Obviously, this is a competitive market, which is not the way it is in our water, wastewater, and power utilities. So we do need to make sure that with the research and the consultants we have and the staff that we hire to handle this particular part of the program, that we obtain the experience we need to be in those particular areas and have success as we move forward. But we have the help of a lot of utilities who are deploying this out. We talked about Longmont earlier, and also we have Fort Collins, who's running parallel with us right now, as well as Estes Park. So we have other resources that we can go to and learn how and what needs to be done next.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Mike. Appreciate you being on. Thanks for your question. We're going to get to our next question in just a moment, but I wanted to let everybody know that you can map your current internet speed. You can do that by going to cityofloveland.org/broadband to try it out. So again, you can map your current internet speed by going to cityofloveland.org/broadband. And our next question comes from our in-person audience. This comes from Linda Rosa, who asks, when will the final plan be available, and how much time will the public have to consider the plan before City Council votes on the issue?
So we are already reviewing the plan with our LCAB as we speak, so that's something that's in process. We are anticipating releasing the packet at least a week earlier than normally would be done in order to give plenty of opportunity for our public to review the plan, ask questions, and make sure that they are informed before the October 23rd meeting. So that is the plan, to make sure that we have ample time to review.
And Brieana, if I can add a date to Linda's question there, sometime either the 11th or 12th of October is the date we're planning to release the packet in full, and at that time, then council would be having almost a week and a half, almost 2 weeks to review. At the same time it's released to City Council, the next day it becomes available to our community. And so I would point out also that the draft business plan and other responses and all of the information that LCAB is considering has also been sent out to our entire City Council. So it is out now, available through Open City Gov for anybody that would like to look at it, and they can see the information we're providing to Council as we move along as well.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for that question from Linda Rosa and our in-person audience. We're going to go to our next question, or our next survey question, before we take our next live audience question from the phones. We want to know, what is most important to you when choosing an internet service provider? Press 1 if it's cost, press 2 if it's speed, press 3 if it's customer service, and press 4 if it's reliability. Again, what is most important to you when choosing an internet service provider? Press 1 for cost, 2 for speed, 3 for customer service, and 4 for reliability. We're going to take our next question from our phone audience. This is from Linda. Hey, Linda, you're up. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to find out if this is an option for people. We live in the Big Thompson Canyon, and we are on Loveland City Power. So when I was reading the information, it said that it was in the Loveland City Power service area, but I wasn't sure if that meant rural as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that question. We are going to be building out within city limits first as a phase 1, and then expanding the system out to the areas that we service outside of the city limits at a future date after we complete construction in town. So that would include the Big Thompson Canyon, and that would include other areas that are adjacent to city limits that we serve as electric. And we're doing that for a couple of reasons, but one is to make sure that we have the ability for scope control, that kind of thing. So we don't know exactly when we'll start in the canyon, but that will be on the timeline at some point in the not too distant future. So hopefully that's a good enough answer. Mm-hmm.
Thanks very much, Linda. And I'll remind folks on the phone that if you want to get email updates from the City of Loveland on this and other issues that affect Loveland residents, go ahead and push 7 on your phone. So 7 if you'd like to get email updates from the city. Our next question comes from Roger in our in-person audience, who asks, are you considering an open access network or 5G fixed wireless technology to offset fiber costs and speed up progress? If not, why not? Who'd like to take Roger's question?
So I'll address the question about 5G first. So there are, one of the things that the City Council had asked us to do was to make sure that it was fast and reliable and future-proof. And we believe that fiber optics is by far the fastest and most future-proof technology out there. 5G wireless uses fiber as a backhaul, and so you can't have 5G without additional fiber in the system. So we believe that having additional fiber will actually allow for more 5G access within our community. With that being said, 5G also tends to be very expensive. So making sure that we are building out the network in the most cost-effective manner, it was also a high priority for us. So that's why we've been looking at fiber only. 5G will be something that can be added to the system as a complementary item, either through other service providers or who knows what might happen down the future. But that's really the plan. As far as open access goes, we are still considering different ways to have the system be available and open to other service providers. We believe that once the network is built and there is a path to different homes and businesses, there's a lot more opportunity for others to use that system after it's up and constructed and being maintained by the city. So there are a lot of different ways that open access can take place. Some of that includes white labeled services where you, a standard incumbent provider would use the network, but they would provide service directly to you as you wouldn't know whose fiber it was. And then there's other options where you would have different open access type scenario where you would have different ISPs to choose from off of a platform. So there's a lot of different options once the network is built out.
I would also add, at LCAB, a lot of the conversations that we're having circle around making sure that this continues to be flexible. We have to push toward some decisions, but we also want to leave open some decisions for flexibility. And I think that open access is something that we can lay across, and we're well aware of that possibility.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks for that question from Roger in our in-person audience. We'll be taking another question in a moment, but I have another quick announcement before we move on. Next week, October 7th through 13th, is Public Power Week. We'd like to celebrate being a publicly owned utility with you. You can swing by the Loveland Public Library to enter in the coloring contest and learn more about public power at cityofloveland.org/water and power. Again, that's cityofloveland.org/water and power. And our next question comes from our in-person audience from W. Schwenker. $80 a month is nearly double what I'm paying. If this is nonprofit, why is it more? Who'd like to take that question?
So we actually have several price points that are being proposed in the business plan, and those range from $20 a month up to $80 a month with different speeds at each price point. We feel that it's important to offer different packages for different people's needs, and not everybody needs 1 gigabit service at $80 a month. There are a variety of different uses within the community, and that's just on the residential side. There's also various packages for commercial customers as well, business customers. So it's really designed to give just like the other incumbents, different options for our community.
Got it, thank you. And our next question comes from Ken. Will there be a bond issue to pay for getting the broadband network started?
Everybody's looking at me. So if the City Council makes a decision to move forward with broadband, the way that's available to us is to issue bonds for that construction through our electric utility. And so, yes, there would be contemplated a bond issue should the council make that decision to move forward with broadband.
I would like to add that if we do issue a bond, that would be paid for by the subscribers to the service. It would not be paid for by a tax increase or utility rate increases. It would be designed to be paid for by only those who use the service.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for that question from Ken. We're going to go to our phone audience for our next question. This is from Janice. Hey, Janice, you're up.
Hello. I was interested in the question that came from Big Thompson Canyon. The rural areas of the nation are the ones that are the least served currently. And I was wondering whether you considered in your phasing and your prioritization whether you might not put first those sections of the community that are outside the city limits that are the least served by currently existing providers. So I'm not sure it's a question, it's more of a suggestion.
Yeah, Janice, thank you very much for your question / comment, and we will look at that. Obviously, what we want to do is build our network and make sure we test it within our city limits first before we start to deploy it in a kind of an outward fashion up the canyon. And we serve past Drake up to, all the way to Waltonia. So we want to make sure that we have everything working in our city before we deploy out. And we certainly understand your comment about the rural area too as well. And that is why our city is working now on strengthening our electric system up the canyon, and you've seen a lot of construction up there to make sure, one, we flood-proofed, but also in the future, should we extend broadband up there, we have the infrastructure pole line ready to go to hang a broadband line on it to move up into the canyon area.
Thanks, Janice. Really appreciate your participation tonight. A reminder, you can learn more on the web at cityofloveland.org/broadband. Again, 0 for questions, 7 to give us your email address to get updates from the city. And our next question comes from the phone. It's Sean. Hey, Sean, thanks for waiting. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so, we have some competitive offerings already. A lot of, I actually have a business internet connection to my home, and I pay a lot more because it's business defined. In essence, they won't throttle me. They don't make decisions off of what packets are running, and that's still of concern. Will the pricing be the same whether it's a business line or a residential line, as far as if it's gigabit or not? And I know you had discussed the pricing structure just a while ago. So does that change if it's a residence or business, and then will the packets be handled differently based off of that definition?
They are anticipated to be handled differently, and that's because business customers typically need different types of services than a residential customer does. They also have different use patterns and different bandwidth needs. So we are anticipating that business needs would require slightly different price points to accommodate those additional services.
And Sean, if I can add, some of the survey work that we did with our community found that we were, and surprised at this, a great number of folks have their own home business. And so that ranges from a whole bunch of different opportunities, in addition to, on the business side, people wanting to have more access to research, and also their children in school, they need resources to look up things on the internet for homework. So we realized that a lot of different applications will come out of the home, and that's why it's so important here on a business from home versus a residential line, that we do have discussions with customers about that, because there may be some things that we can help them with as far as speed, and of course our up and down load speeds will be strong both ways as we move forward. So we appreciate that question, because it really is important to us learning about this, in addition to the medical field having a lot of need for residential service now, both from a teledoc situation where you're seeing a lot more healthcare providers providing a service to the community over the internet for medical care. And so making sure that that's available on a residential or business opportunity at a home will be very important going into the future.
The other thing I would add to that is traditionally one of the differences between business and residential, in addition to speed, is the symmetry. So a lot of times with a residential application, you're consuming from the internet more than you're sending up. A lot of times with the business, you have the need for just as fast upload as you do download. And what we're looking at here would be symmetric, meaning that the upload and the download are both, excuse me, equal speeds. So even in the residential, that would be an improvement.
Appreciate it. My issue is still, the reason I had to go business was because of throttling issues and decisions they make off of throttling certain data on the residential line.
So we are not planning on doing throttling or limits, data cap limits as part of the plan.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you, Steve. Or thank you, Sean. Really appreciate you being on. Thanks for your questions. Great question. We're going to go to back to our in-person audience. This question comes from Leanne. Will the city have a, oh no, actually, sorry, we've got Roger first. Sorry, Leanne, we'll get to you next. What services will be provided? Internet, TV, telephone, et cetera? Will there be bundles?
So right now, we are looking at providing internet service and telephone service. We are still evaluating options around TV service. So with internet and telephone, there will be bundling options. If in the future we provide additional services such as TV, those would also be different bundled services.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that question from Roger. And here's our question from Leanne. Will the city have a poverty program, discounts like CenturyLink for customers who are on food stamps or Medicaid or living below the poverty line?
Do you want me to take that?
Go ahead.
So our hope is that we have a variety of different packages that meet different needs. If that is not the case and our city council finds that there are additional types of packages or programs that are needed, those can be adjusted and provided at those times. Some of those decisions will need to be policy level decisions made by our city council in order to determine what those look like and what those programs would entail.
And if I can add to that, Leanne, that's a good question. One of the things that we looked at as part of our guidance from City Council on this topic was to make sure that this was accessible to everyone. And so what we mean by accessible is that the lines that are installed either above the ground or below ground will pass by everybody's home or business. The connection then is the decision that somebody can make, and that's voluntary, of course. But the idea there was if there were people that needed this service and were having to look at their ability to pay for this service, like other programs throughout the United States, there are different programs that offer assistance to folks that need some help. And so right now our city is researching all of those different programs and preparing that information to come to our city council on October 23rd so that we can discuss that and figure out what kind of rate structure that might look like for those that need some help. So that will be more to come on that, but yes, that is something we're aware of and want to put forward our best foot in our community.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for that question. We're going to go to our phone audience again for our next question from Brian. A reminder, though, if you want to get email updates from the city on this and other issues affecting residents, press 7 on your phone. We'll gladly get your email address and keep you better updated moving forward. We did have a big line in there earlier, but we've just cleared that out. So press 7 if you didn't get a chance already to give us your email address to get updates. Our next one comes live from Brian on the phone. Hey, Brian.
Hello. I was interested if the city was going to support net neutrality.
You get to start.
All right, I will start this question. That's really a policy level decision for our city council that they could take up, and as a publicly owned broadband utility, we would have the ability to make those types of decisions that are best for our community guided by input from our community. So that's, you know, it's hard to know where we would take a stance on that, because that's really up to our city council, but we would have the full authority to do so should we choose in this scenario.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate that, Brian. Thank you for your question. Let's go to our next question. This is a question that comes from a few of our members of our in-person audience, from John and Roger and Vi. Since the plan has been released, what are the residential price points, speeds, and packages? Specific details, please.
Oh, that's putting us on the spot. So we have, in our residential price points, we have prices that range from starting at $20 a month for 25 megabytes of service up to 1 gigabyte service at $80 a month. There's also an additional service, I believe, at $300 for $50 a month. And I do not remember the business packages as well, but those are certainly available on our website if you would like to take a look at those.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much. And we're going to go to our next question. This one also comes from our in-person audience. This is from Tanya. Who is building and running the projects? The city, or bidding out contracts out to contractors? Construction and engineering, and how long to build?
So we issued an RFP for a design-build contractor, and we have a contract with Nokia for the design portion of that contract. If City Council chooses to move forward with this project, we would be using Bear Communications, who is the construction side of the team that responded to our RFP and that we awarded to. So those would be the folks that would be doing the actual design and construction. And obviously the city would be managing that construction and doing all of our due diligence, just like we do on other large capital projects. And once that construction project is completed, the city would operate and maintain the system.
If I can add to that, Tanya, a couple of things. One, our city council felt it was important for us to have the design-build contractor engaged early in the process to look at what the construction costs would be, so that we can have a very good number moving forward on what they estimate that cost to be. And so for that reason, we've had Bear Construction here already, even though we're still in the design phase. They're the contracting arm, and they're out walking around, looking at the sites, looking at routes that are going to be taken, what's our geological formations, what's our topography look like, what kind of construction would be unique to our particular area. And they are doing all that to help get this cost estimate more accurate. Also, as we move forward on this project and have better information on the design going forward, we also are taking the time to make sure that we discuss some of the issues as how this will be deployed, the operating areas that we're going to use, where we'll be housed as a business, and those kind of things, which are also part of the great work we're getting through the design process. So those two things coupled together, we have a very strong partnership between Nokia and Bear, and they've worked together before, and they know how each other think and work, and I think that's a good benefit for our community moving forward on this project. So we are doing a little bit different. We've had the design work underway now, but that way when we come to council with some information here, we have a good solid cost estimate to go off of moving forward.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for that question from Tanya. Let's go back to our phone audience. This one comes from Lee. Hey, Lee, you're up. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was taped. I stay as grid-free as I possibly can, and I did pick up on the fact that they will have to hire another new positions in order to give us the most optimum performance and availability in the city. I'd like to know exactly what it is that those of us that stay grid-free can expect this to be of benefit.
Do we know what grid-free is?
I'm assuming just doesn't do internet.
So can we get a clarification on what grid-free means?
I do not have a smartphone. I do not have a computer. I am not online, and I have a horse in the garage.
Oh.
It sounds like that this wouldn't impact you then. So the funding for this comes from subscribers, and so if you're not likely to subscribe, then there wouldn't be an impact to you that I can think of.
Right, it's a voluntary service, so you would not be required to hook up or do anything, and so you and your horse would be okay.
What advantage is this to those of us that are not taking part in that program? Why are we interested in the city doing it? We do live here.
There's a lot of advantage to the city for greater connectivity. So once there is additional infrastructure in place, there's a lot of things that can be done with that infrastructure. And that's not just city projects, but also other service providers that may come into the community, different types of businesses that would be able to take advantage of this services. There's a lot of impact to healthcare and improved connectivity with your healthcare provider and hospitals. So there's a lot of advantages that a community receives from having more communication infrastructure available to them.
I think, and from an economic development perspective, it's just good for the city as a whole. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's fiber in the east end of the city, and I saw firsthand companies and large employers that came into that area that absolutely wouldn't be here if that fiber weren't here. And so I think overall there's a benefit to the city. And you also look at libraries and kids who are doing homework and doing more things on research. I mean, there's for both families and businesses, I think there's a lot of potential benefit. I also think there's a benefit just for the city keeping current with the movement of technology. In the near future, you're seeing things like smart cities. You're already seeing those pop up in areas around, the airport down in Denver and various areas. And you have to be prepared for that stuff to come in. You have to have the infrastructure in place to take advantage of that. So I think there's a lot of those things that it's just setting us up for in advance. So whether you use it or not, individually, I think it's good for the city.
And also one other thing, if you ever moved and you wanted to sell your house or where you're living now, the fact that you do have that fiber out in the front yard or backyard, depending on where it's run in your particular area, it would be something that somebody else might want to have in the future and could benefit you in that way, that it would be available. Of course, it's not connected to you, and it's a voluntary service, but for the future, somebody could be connected that way.
Thank you very much. Great answers. Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate you being on. Thank you for sharing your question. And we're going to go back to our in-person audience for our next one. This one comes from Leonard. If the city is going to bury the overhead lines, is Loveland coordinating installation with this to save money?
I would love to. From the power perspective, it would be wonderful if we could complete undergrounding of the project. Unfortunately, the project scope to do that work would be very difficult and probably cost prohibitive. There's also differences in burial depths for communication needs versus electrical needs. So although we are putting in additional conduit in the ground when we do capital construction projects for the power side that can be used for communications, it's harder to do the reverse.
So one other thing, Leonard, on that, the electric utility has a program called Overhead to Underground Conversion. And what we found in October of 2011, if you remember, is we had a really, oh wait, it's October now, forget what I'm just saying. We had a severe storm, and it caused a lot of limbs and branches to come down while there were still leaves on the trees. And it caused some pretty harsh conditions for us, especially in areas that were overheaded. So what we're looking at and have in our program budgets for the power utility is to make conversions where it is important for us to get lines underground, just to make sure they're more resilient in the case if we have storms and other events. And so as we do those overhead to underground conversions, we work with our own utility to put that down, but also we try and improve the area by getting rid of the other lines that are there. And there are other utilities that share our poles across the city. And so when we go underground, we try and bring them and with us so that then that pole can be removed and there's nothing there anymore and you have a little bit better view in your backyard or your front yard depending on where you are. So that's another way that we do this and work to coordinate undergrounding of utilities, and not just ours but all utilities.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate those answers. Thanks for that question from Leonard. Our next question will be up in just a moment, but I've got our third survey question next. We want to know, after hearing the information we've shared so far today, would you like the city to authorize the broadband project to move forward? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Again, after hearing the information shared so far today, would you like the city to authorize the broadband project to move forward? Press 1 on your phone for yes, and 2 on your phone for no. And we're going to go to our next question from Mary Lee. Hey, Mary Lee, thanks for being on. Go ahead with your question, please.
2 questions. I think you've answered part of mine. First question is how this would be spread throughout the city, either underground or by existing power lines, and you've answered that one. I also am concerned about TV service because I have had Comcast for decades. I'm a preferred customer, and I do not want the service that you're proposing. What would it do to my TV?
If you choose not to subscribe, there would be no impact on you. It would not impact your current services through your current provider, or it shouldn't at least.
One thing I would add to that is we've seen in other areas of the country and in Colorado where this type of a broadband service has come in, and what you see is a lowering of prices across the board. So for people, because of the added competition. So for people who don't take this service, there's still a good likelihood that the cost of whatever service they're using, be it Comcast or some other incumbent, would drop.
Got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mary Lee. Let's get Travis's question up right away next. Hey, Travis.
Awesome. I had a question about the infrastructure and the installation of the fiber. I was wondering, is it going to be ran to like the city block, or is it going to be ran all the way to the house door? And if it's ran to the door, what are we estimating for installation costs? Because I heard that was very expensive for the subscriber.
So we are looking at this in 2 different sections. So there is basically a fixed cost, which is what we're calling the outside plant. That runs in front of every home and business, so that you can consider that at the curb. The second cost is a variable cost that's dependent upon the number of subscribers. So if you decide to subscribe, we would run what we call a drop or a fiber connection from the curb to your home. We would install the electronics that you would need to connect to the service at your house. So that right now we are not anticipating an installation cost for our residential customers. There would be a small installation fee, subscriber fee for business customers, but that would be built into the cost of service for the rates and would be included in the initial build-out cost that we would look to bond for our estimated take rate numbers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Appreciate you being on. Let's get our next question in. Again, we are broadcasting on Facebook Live, and that's where this next question comes from Mark. What subscription level would you need to break even on the cost of the fiber installation to homes and businesses? That's from Mark on Facebook Live.
So based on our current estimates and our current models, we are looking at a take rate in the low 30s. So our estimated take rate, what we believe based on the 2 surveys that we have conducted over the last 2 years, we believe that our take rate will be 42% for residents and 27% for businesses. However, if we looked at different break-even rates, what we could sustain the business model at, and we believe that would be 32% for residential customers, which we believe is a very conservative number.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mark. Appreciate that question from our Facebook Live audience. I'm going to go ahead and remind everybody that if you wanted to get email updates from the city, you're on the phone and you haven't already given us your email to get updates, we've got about 10 minutes left in this forum, so press 7 on your phone to give us your email address so we can keep you updated on this proposed project, as well as other issues that may affect you in the city. So again, press 7 on your phone if you haven't already to give us your email address and get updates. Our next question comes from Gary in our in-person audience, who asks, how do you plan to meet your operating expenses and debt service with about 15K subscription accounts?
So our models are based on a percent take rate, which is the 42%, and that number varies depending on how how the city grows over time. So I guess that's just built into the model. We believe that it works, and those numbers have been evaluated not only in our feasibility study, but then again through a detailed financial plan that has been conducted by our financial staff at the city.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that question from Gary. Go to another one in a minute. We've got our last survey question for you. If the City of Loveland were to provide internet service as an option for residents, how likely would you be to sign up? Press 1 for likely, press 2 for not likely, and press 3 if you just need more information. Again, if the City of Loveland were to provide internet service as an option for residents, how likely would you be to sign up? Press 1 for likely, press 2 for not likely, and press 3 if you just need more information. Go ahead and vote on that now. We appreciate your participation in all of those polls. That's great feedback. Our next question comes from Roger. Has there been consideration of Loveland to Fort Collins joining common elements of systems together?
Yeah, so Loveland is in a great spot, geographically with Longmont and Fort Collins, who are both already kind of moving forward with some of their initiatives. And so we're looking for a retail model that also overlays the opportunity for lots of collaboration. And they can talk more to it, but we've had lots of communication with both Fort Collins and Longmont, and I think there are a lot of opportunities to potentially share things like support, call centers, potentially equipment, certainly long hauls back toward Denver or toward Chicago.
Roger, this is a great question. Since we've all been looking at broadband, our communities and others in the Front Range all meet on a standard basis to go over things, and some of the things that we've already accomplished. One is we've had a joint inventory of all of the infrastructure that exists in our cities because of the fiber existing through Platte River Power Authority, and that fiber was installed in the early 90s through all of our cities of Longmont, Fort Collins, Estes Park, and Loveland. And as part of that process, it ran through our city pretty well. And so we have inventoried that in the last couple of years to make sure where all those connections are. We've also been able to settle on a common software package that tracks the location of all of that fiber as it goes through our communities. And the benefit for that is by being a standardized package, whatever regional work we do going forward, we'll be able to have common ways of tracking and keeping track of our system through each community. Also, we've looked at standardizing on some equipment and talked about procedures, call centers, and other things. So there's a lot of opportunities here, and we're just all kind of starting, besides Longmont, on this process and journey. And the hope is that we can do as much as possible to be common in what we do in our procedures and be able to share assets to help keep our costs down to our community members as a whole.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And let's get to our next question. This one's coming from Philip. Are steps being taken to preserve landscape while balancing needed construction of the network?
Absolutely. So fiber is very small. It's actually smaller than the size of your hair, and so you can put together large bundles of fiber in a very small space. So the disruption will actually be fairly minimal. When you think about other large construction projects that we do when we install power lines or water lines, those are huge trenches that need to be dug. So these are very small. So that's the first way that we can control disruption. And then the second is, of course, that just like any other construction project that we accomplish at the city, we would expect this to be held to the same high standards where we would repair and return landscaping to its pre-construction condition.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate that question from Philip. Our next one comes from Vi. If the city delays moving forward with broadband now until there is an additional vote, how would that affect the cost to the city?
So there would definitely be cost increases, primarily due to inflation for construction prices and material prices. And then we are also anticipating an increase in interest rates to our bond. So it would really depend upon when we would take that bond to market and when we would need to be securing materials, that those costs would go up. And I don't have those numbers directly in front of me, but they are in our packet of information that we have released to our Communication Advisory Board.
If I can add to that, I think to give some context to the question in case some people are not aware, right now it's been staff's opinion that in our particular community, based upon our charter, that our city council can make the decision to provide broadband and issue debt without a vote. So the question that came up was, should there be a vote? Should the council or the community decide to have a vote, then that would be, as Bree talked about, a process where if the decision's made sometime in October, early November, and we move forward, we see debt issuance in January. If there's a vote that wants to be taken, we've missed the time period for a November 2018 ballot election. So the earliest you could be in some kind of election process is sometime in March or April of 2019. And so that's the delay that you see. And my recollection is somewhere between $4 and $6 million in delay for that time period because of, as mentioned, inflation, and also the feds are looking at some more increases to the interest rate, which we would see as an impact to us moving forward. So those are kind of what we look at right now, and again, we're waiting to have the opportunity to be in front of our city council on October 23rd to talk to them about this, and part of this discussion is captured in our draft business plan that we've already issued out, and we'll be updating that with some other information here shortly.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for that question from Vi. This next one comes from Harvey. Will service to the home, with service to the home, would the termination point be on the outside of the home?
We are actually anticipating that the electronics would be on the inside of the house. So there would be what you could best describe as a connection type box on the outside of the home, where we would terminate the fiber that runs from the curb or the sidewalk to the side of the house. We would then run an additional fiber inside where we would connect the electronics. So that's basically, we call that an ONT, or an optical network terminal. You could consider that basically the receiver for the broadband signal. And that would connect to an outlet inside of your house, and you could hardwire a connection to a computer there, or you can connect a router, either provided by the city or independently, kind of a bring your own device scenario, so you could use your Wi-Fi inside of your home.
So much. Appreciate that question from Harvey. And we have just about run out of our hour-long time that we had allotted for this town hall. We have questions remaining, though, so for those of you who are still on the phone, if you didn't get your question answered, or if you have additional thoughts, questions, or comments, you can stay on the phone, and after we close out this call in just a couple minutes, you'll have the opportunity to leave us a voicemail message. If you need somebody with the city to get back to you on your question, comment, or concern, please leave that question, comment, or concern in addition to your name and some contact information so that we know who to get back to. So again, you can do that just by staying on the line. And thank you so much for participating. I'm going to turn it back over to City Manager Steve Adams, but one more prompt. cityofloveland.org/broadband if you want to learn more about this after we're finished with the call again. That's cityofloveland.org/broadband. All right, Steve, go ahead and take us to the end.
Okay, thank you, Ian. To first thank our audience tonight for their participation. We are out of time tonight for our discussion. I counted 25 questions that we addressed here in our hour time, almost pretty good there, and appreciate everybody having those questions. And I'm sure there's more questions out there, so make sure the audience here at our facility, make sure if you have questions that you didn't get a chance to get answered, make sure you give those to our staff, and we'll make sure that you have an answer for those. So if you have questions, we encourage you to post them online at thecityofloveland.org/broadband email to us, and also broadband@cityofloveland.org, again, is our site. Also, we have a phone number that's set up, and voicemail is on that, so you can leave a message for us, and that is 970-962-2010. So that's 970-962-2010. And you can also do that. Also, it says here to contact your city council member. So since we only have one tonight, all of you can race and give him a question at the end. I'm sure he'd love that. And also, I would mention that we have our LCAB members here, and they stood up earlier in the time period, and they are very knowledgeable on this subject. All of them are very engaged. So please also feel free to reach out to them here in the audience tonight. And I wanted to thank you on behalf of our staff and all of the community that participated. Thank you very much for taking the time tonight. We know there's some other competitions coming up shortly with Thursday night football and everything else. So yeah, we appreciate you choosing us to participate tonight with. So thank you.